There's something captivating about video games, right? They're so visually understandable, yet mechanically complex. A constantly updating interplay of logical systems that can react in real time to all sorts of simulated situations, as well as inputs from us, living, thinking beings for the most part. Video games take the barren binary void of zeros and ones and essentially births entirely unique worlds from them. To quote Carl Sagan, if you wish to bake an apple pie from scratch, you must first invent the universe. Yeah, I could probably do that. I've always liked making things. As a kid, I made my own books, comics, and stupid little skit films pretty much all the time. But making a video game was always out of reach. My big creative pie in the sky. How could I, a small child with no prospects or relevant knowledge, create a fun virtual experience for my Nintendo DS handheld gaming system? It's not like there was a game that would allow you to do that. I mean, I guess I could try to make a game out of, paper. Yeah, I didn't have knowledge of coding or computer programs or any of the required skills for game dev growing up. Tragic, I know. But what I did have was construction paper and pencils. So I would draw out platformer levels on a bunch of pieces of paper, fold or staple them all together, and there we go. Video game! I drew these little paper characters I'd cut out for the players and then drag them through the obstacles, which were all pretty static, of course. I couldn't have like moving platforms or whatever. So these games had to be the hybrid cars of imaginary video games. I got a lot of mileage out of making these bad boys. I made some original paper games, but I drew a good amount based on actual games too. I found this paper version of My Sims for the Wii that I made because for some reason, after I heard about My Sims, I just couldn't stop thinking about it. I laid out a whole town with quests and houses and secret caves and stuff just to satiate my thirst for a game I never even figured out how to play properly. I also drew up a bunch of paper Sonic games because of course I did. And look at these! I had the biggest smile finding these at the back of my closet. Maybe Eggman should have stayed back there, but look, you can flip them over to activate their super forms. I even had a game based on Platinum Family hit Sonic the Hedgehog 06. But this was called Silver the Hedgehog since, he was my muse. You could choose between Sonic, Silver, or Blaze, and enjoy killer cutscenes such as,
I'll send you back in time so you can destroy the Iblis Trigger.
Okay, I must. I've got you, Iblis Trigger. Who are you? I'm Silver. Well, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Sonic. Sonic the Hedgehog. Bring it. Beat Sylph and get the Sonic, I have no time. Let's battle. What? Of me! Amy, I don't want to date you. Too bad. Chaos control. These paper games were awesome for the portion of my life I made them in, but deep in my heart, I still yearned for the chance to one day create a real live virtual video game. And amazingly, as if by some miracle, a game was about to release that would allow me to do just that. Drawn to Life. Developed by Fitcell and released for the Nintendo DS on September 10th, 2007, Drawn to Life was a title that promised the impossible. You could draw your own game. Kinda. I remember seeing the ads for this game that had been set up at my local GameStop and being instantly enamored by the concept. You might say I was drawn to it. You would draw something on the screen, and there it was in the game. It all made sense now. This was how making video games worked to my 9-year-old brain. I had just been waiting for the game people to finally let me do it too. And now they were. And it was way less exciting than I thought it'd be. In Drawn to Life, you don't actually draw out your own levels or adventure like I'd imagined. The game basically gives you templates for your character and specific items and objects within the world that you have to draw within. If your beloved OC doesn't fit within these specific proportions, you might as well just give up because your baby's gonna be freakish and ugly. I tried to make Fred the Angry Spoon my main character, and that meant he either had to float in midair or be split down his torso in order to have legs. And another finger curls on the monkey's paw. Drawn to Life grew to become a game series that I have fond memories of to this day, even if it didn't meet my unrealistic expectations. It's got really cute characters and a surprisingly dark story beneath its doodly exterior. I enjoyed these games a lot, but they didn't quite quench my thirst for game dev, unfortunately. Alas, it just wasn't meant to be. If only there was a burly, garlic-scented Italian man to share with me the means to manifest my creative visions. But alas... What? What are you saying? A burly Italian man? Garlic-scented? Wario? Where? WarioWare is a series of Nintendo games starring the titular garlic goblin himself, Wario, where instead of playing one long game spanning multiple worlds or the like, you play microgames. Teeny tiny little games. If normal video games are akin to feature-length films, then microgames are TikToks, Reels, YouTube's sweaty shorts. Bite-sized, seconds-long challenges with super simple goals, like picking a nose, frying an egg, or dropping your wife off the side of a building. WarioWare has you playing a ton of these back to back to back, testing just how much time you can waste before losing all your lives and getting 4 big booms! Just like TikTok. The series started in 2003 and had 6 whole entries before eventually Nintendo got burnt out for making so much short-form content that in 2010, they decided to release WarioWare D.I.Y. Do it yourself, you stupid bitch. Imagine creating your very own microgames from the comfort of your Nintendo DS. D.I.Y. promised just that, and hearing about the game coming down the pipeline sent 11-year-old Jacka into a state of unbridled anticipation. I was frothing at the mouth, counting down the days until I'd be taken under Wario's olive oil scented wing and finally become a real live game dev. And on March 28th, 2010, it happened. Smells like home. The premise is super simple. Dr. Krygor, this mad scientist guy, invents the Super Makermatic 21, being inspired by a nightmare he had the night before where games flew out of his TV screen and ate his face. And this makes a lot of sense when you consider what tech companies are usually inspired by. Wario then shows up and he's like, hey, fix my TV. Oh wait, actually these look pretty cool, wanna trade? But Krygor explains to him that it's not a TV, it's a machine that will allow anyone to create their own microgames by combining tools for art, music, and AI. And Wario, not unlike the crypto bros running the country, is quickly won over by Krygor's savvy use of buzzwords and convinced that the Super Makermatic 21 will make him richer than ever before. And yeah, it looks like a big DS. It prints money! In Diamond City, you play the role of the new manager of the local DIY shop, a store specializing in selling Super Makermatic products, made by Wario, his friends, and eventually by you. But not before we get a visit from the W-Man himself, who wants to exploit you for your labor and have you finish his games for him. Okay, yay! Helping out Wario doesn't give you money or benefits or much of a sense of being valued for your work, but he does let you start without 5 years of prior experience, and he even offers to teach you the ropes, which immediately shatters any sense of realism this game could have hoped to achieve. Finishing Wario's games and going through the DIY 101 lessons are honestly a great and thorough way to get accustomed to the process of making microgames. Each microgame is built from the ground up using simple art and animation tools, a Mario Paint level music workspace, and AI. The AI in this game is really just a simplified version of actual logic-based programming. Everything in your game must be programmed. If you were to make a Pop the Balloon game, where is the balloon going to start? How will it move around on screen? What happens when you tap it or another object? What does the player need to do in order to win, and how are those conditions met? You get to decide these things, and you alone have to figure out how to implement them all on your own. If that sounds like a lot to wrap your head around, it is. It's programming without any of the written code, but it's still programming. The game doesn't even let you start making any microgames until you complete DIY 101, and that was definitely the right move here. It walks you through every step of the process in a pretty fun and detailed manner. Provided you have some reading comprehension and are okay with fiddling around until things click, you'll be set to go in no time. There's even the assembly dojo that you unlock afterwards if you want to dive even deeper into more of the Game Maker-matic's capabilities. After your microgame is complete, you then get to distribute it out to the world. You decide how the cartridge will look, give it a title, description, and come up with your own brand name to slap on the box. Watching my microgames get built on a little production line, loaded into boxes, and shipped out in trucks to be displayed on the shelf of the DIY shop, I don't know, it altered the chemistry of my 11-year-old brain. My neurons were firing off faster than Wario's cheeks after the biannual garlic party. This was everything I ever wanted. You could share your games locally with friends or even upload them online. There was the Ninsoft store where you could download microgames made by actual developers like Cave Story dev Pixel, Metroid creator Yoshio Sakamoto, and Sakurai? Hey, even Fifth Cell's here. On top of all that, you could download WarioWare D.I.Y Showcase to your Wii and play any microgame on the big screen. So why don't we take a look at some of the microgames I made when I was a micro gamer? I'm gonna go wash my hands. Looking through my DIY game section, it looks like I made 13 games between 2010 and 2015, most of them in 2010. You got this one where you gotta reflect an energy ball between two stick dudes like in a Ganondorf fight. This one's based on another old character of mine, Turtle Boy. He's gotta defeat Pick Guy. Who is Pick Guy? He's dead. Pretty easy stuff, so I upped the ante in Turtle Boy 2. Now you're in Egypt, and there are fireballs. I made a hedge trimming game, a number game where you have to tap the numbers in order, and an animal game where you have to guess which animals are singing the song. This was also around the time the Bit Trip series was coming out, so I even made a microgame with Commander Video where you have to slide under obstacles like in Bit Trip Runner. You could tell I was really trying to push what was possible in a microgame with some of these. Like, what if I could make a whole Mario and Luigi styled RPG battle system? Jack Chronicle was my attempt to do just that. Note the cool spelling. There was a red one where you dodged an enemy and a blue one where you attacked it. I would have just combined the two into one microgame, but microgames had to be short and they couldn't really be too complex, so this was my little workaround for that. Well, technically, some microgames could be a lot longer and more complicated, but those were reserved for the boss stages within the games made by Wario's friends. You weren't allowed to make your own boss games, and that always pissed me off considering all the other Nintendo-made microgames were able to be recreated within the Maker-matic. Wario's friends did leave his company to form Diamond Software, so I don't know, maybe they had some special sauce we didn't know about. Then there are these three microgames that I made in high school. The Straddle games. Straddle Clap, Straddle Jump, and Straddle Leap. I guess I liked the word straddle. They all star this little guy doing the same Irish jig animation. I must have thought it was versatile, so I stuck him in a rhythm game and two jumping games. These ones definitely seem a lot more competent than my earlier games, at least artistically. But that was pretty much it for my microgames. Apart from those, WarioWare D.I.Y also lets you make your own songs and 4-panel comics. So let's check out the only song I ever tried to make back then, titled Growlullaby.
We're making it out of time and steady with this one.
Okay, how about my comics? I think I was pretty funny back then. This one's called The Beard. Time to grow some beard. Sigh. I need a beard, says Beard on. To be caught. Well, maybe the punchline is in the beard too? The beard has arrived. Damn, I could have said the beard has appeared. That would have been good. And this one, the beard isn't showing up, and then it does. That's like eyebrow raise levels of funny. I even made a third one a while later, and you could tell I couldn't give a crap about this beard series anymore. The art quality took a nosedive, and we end on another cliffhanger. Just as I feared, no end for the beard. The comic portion of WarioWare D.I.Y is probably the weakest of the three. I wasn't funny, the comics were limited in length and color, and I don't know, it just didn't really entice me when I could make way better comics on a piece of paper. I did find it fun unlocking all the comics by Nintendo though. I remember flipping through these late at night, and I always thought it was cool how each artist had their own approaches to the 4-panel formula. One of them also predicted Among Us. So that's, opening this game up always brings back so many memories. Countless hours spent combing through the tutorials, drawing up graphics, assembling the AI. I spent so much time in this game that the music is practically engraved into my brain matter, which is fine because the soundtrack is fire. There's a reason I've been using songs from it in my videos since the beginning of the channel. This game was such a big part of my life that it almost feels wrong to make a whole video about it without at least getting my hands dirty again. So let's do it. You bring the dirt, I'm making a microgame. Who cares if I haven't opened this game or programmed anything in years? I'm way more capable now than I was back then. I'm a better drawer, I'm a YouTuber, my bones hurt, and I have the help of my first ever sponsor, Milanote. As a creative person, inspiration often strikes at less than ideal times.
I got it!
It can be hard to keep track of all the ideas that pop into your head, and organizing them is a whole nother beast. Forget scrolling through your jumbled up notes app to find your third list of hopefully funny jokes. You need Milanote. Milanote is the tool for organizing all your creative endeavors. Whether you want to brainstorm, collaborate on a project, or do some other third thing, Milanote provides an online canvas you can access from anywhere to do all of that and more. I've been using it as a pinboard to help me visualize ideas for a potential microgame. Being able to lay out everything however I want, connect ideas together with little arrows, and even doodle directly on the board makes me feel like I'm unlocking my brain and finally have a grasp on the thoughts all floating around up there. Rearranging and adding new elements like images, to-do lists, and links is a snap. You can even embed videos with a quick copy and paste of a link. I decided to go with my second idea for a microgame, Nut Shooter. Title pending. So I gathered up a bunch of game art references and arranged them into an inspiration mood board that I can click into whenever I'm about to go into creative cardiac arrest. Even if you're not the best at organizing or starting a new project, Milanote provides over 100 built-in templates to help kick off any kind of creative project you can think of. Whether you're planning a game or your week, it's frictionless and fun. And once you're ready, you can easily invite others to collaborate with you on your board in real time. I invited Percy for feedback on my board, and he said it looked good. I've gotten a large number of sponsorship offers in the past, but I never wanted to take any of them unless it was for something I could wholeheartedly recommend. Since trying Milanote, I've been using it almost every day, so I totally suggest giving it a go. Milanote is available for free with no time limit whatsoever, so sign up for your free Milanote account using my link in the description. Thank you, Milanote, for sponsoring this video! So here's what I came up with. Nut Shooter. I couldn't think of a better title. The aim of the game is your aim game. To get the nut to the goal, you have to choose if you want to shoot it to the left or the right, after which it'll bounce off the walls twice before arriving at an endpoint. Sometimes the goal will be on the left, and sometimes it'll be on the right. Also, an obstacle may randomly appear, which means you'll have to reconsider which way to shoot based on that as well. The goal is going to be one of these little critters, and once they get a nut, they'll get outfitted with it. We're calling them wee nuts because they are small, and I enjoy stupid names. And that's the plan. I decided to stream my development process on Twitch, thinking I could probably bust this out in an afternoon. I mean, it's a single-screen game with a bouncing ball mechanic. I'd eat my shirt if this was going to take me more than a couple of hours. Well, I guess it's high in fibers. You know how they say limitation breeds innovation? A lot of older tech often called for game devs to come up with creative workarounds to achieve what they wanted. Maybe they only had a limited number of colors or pixels, so they had to make their character designs simple yet unique in order to stand out. Or they had to compose really strong melodies for their soundtracks since they only had a handful of audio channels that could play at once. Well, in my case, I think I actually overestimated how much WarioWare D.I.Y was capable of, because I ran into way more limitations than I expected, and they definitely weren't breeding innovation. It was more like frustration being bred. Frustration bread. Multigrain. The butt slice. Before I spent too much time on the graphics, I wanted to make sure the game would, work. I plopped down a basic layout, drew the nut, and made placeholder arrows that you tap on to select your shot direction. I just needed to program the nut to shoot and then bounce in the opposite direction it was traveling whenever it touched whatever I decided was a wall. As long as I set the angle of the nut right, the game should basically be automatic. Simple! Oh, except for that it was impossible! WarioWare D.I.Y operates through object interactions. If I make a nut object and a wall object, I can choose from a preset list of what I want them to do and what I want to happen when these two objects interact in some way. In this case, I could have the nut either travel in a specific direction or towards a specific location. If the nut touched the wall on the right, I could have it change the direction it's traveling in and go to the left. But it wasn't that simple. It was simpler! You can only have an object move in one of 8 directions, all of them being at 45-degree increments. So when my nut bounced, the angle was too wide and it wouldn't wind up where I wanted it to go. It was always too high above the goal areas, and it definitely wasn't going to be able to bounce twice in any meaningful way. If I could just angle it a little lower, I wouldn't be talking about this. But here we are. Aiming the nut. Harder than it looks. So the nut traveling in a specific direction was off the table. But what about having it travel to a specific spot instead? That's doable. All I have to do is select a point on the screen and the nut goes there in a straight line. Angle be damned. But what happens when the nut touches the wall? I can't have it just go to the left at 45 degrees again. I guess it could travel to a specific spot on the left side of the screen after it touches the right wall. That fixes, oh wait. If touching the right wall always sends the nut to a specific spot on the left wall and vice versa, then what happens in the cases where the player shoots the nut the other way? Okay, wait. I can set everything up so the walls are actually divided. So when the nut bounces off a bottom wall, it goes to the opposite side's top wall. And then that part of the wall sends it to the opposite goal area. But hold on. Okay, so you can only have 5 programming slots per object? So even if I wanted to do that, the nut can't be programmed to react to that many different things. All right, well, I guess I can't make the game now, Wario. Game's canceled. Thanks a lot. I toiled away at this for a few hours, trying anything I could think of. I had a few brain blasts, but those quickly turned into brain blanks when I then realized that DIY doesn't work like I'd hoped, and trying is futile. Wait, I could also... Wait. Oh my glob.
Wait.
No! Oh my god! I don't think it's gonna work. Fuck. I can't do it. I was just about ready to sacrifice my creative vision just to get this game to function in some capacity, when someone in the chat brought up the possibility of there not being 1, but 2 nuts. Since the nut used up 2 programming slots for the initial shot to the left or the right, and 1 programming slot for each possible bounce after that, maybe I could get around the limit of 5 by sneakily swapping out the nut with a second nut that would then have even more empty slots for the next bounce, and then swap to a 3rd nut for the potential final bounce against the randomly appearing obstacle. Does this make any sense? There's a good chance I lost a decent chunk of you explaining all this. And you know what? That's fine. Coding is pretty dang hard, even when it's set to easy weenie baby mode like it is here. Don't worry though, we're almost through with it. So how was I going to manage this? I mean, swapping out a nut for another one mid-bounce? They said it couldn't be done. No one had ever pulled off a heist like this since The Nut Job? I don't know, I haven't seen that movie. But it actually wasn't hard at all. All I had to do was set the second nut's starting state to be attached to the first nut. So until it gets told to do something else, it'll always be with its nut buddy. When the first nut touches the wall, it goes invisible, and the second nut then bounces to the opposite wall, where it goes invisible, and the secret third nut is activated. It had to be done with workarounds and illusions, but for all intents and purposes, it worked. I had effectively pulled off my own ship of Theseus. The Nut of Theseus. Wow, I am so sorry. After spending 5 hours doing all that, I realized there was no way I was also going to finish the graphics and music in one day. So we were going to have a microgame dev day 2. No way around it. But compared to the first, my second stream was easy as pie. Which I'm not actually sure is that easy since I've never made a pie, but I have done art, and maybe I'm pretty good at that. But I'm also crazy slow because it took me another 8 hours to finish Nut Shooter. So maybe it was easy as pie. Pie bakers, comment down below what you think. Because WarioWare D.I.Y is a DS game, every art asset is comprised of pixel art, something I'm not too versed in, but I think I may do pretty well here. You can make your own custom stamps, so if you want to have like a repeating tile background, it's totally doable. Just know that there aren't any layers in this game, and the undo button only goes back one action, so you have to be really precise with your coloring, lest you long for pain and suffering. Oh no, 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 I messed it up. I went on to make a bunch of different animations for the characters in the game, like the Wii Nut being happy when they get their little hat, or broken on the inside when you fail. You jerk. I also made this bomb that explodes if you shoot the nut at it, since I figured what better way to convince the player to shoot one way than threatening them with an imminent explosion. You thought I was going to explode for a second there, didn't you? I topped things off with a little Macamo operating the nut cannon lever, and I'm really proud of how they turned out. Having my initial doodles to work off of helped a ton, since sketching in this game isn't really an easy task. After the art was complete, I then added in a bunch of sound effects and some confetti for when you win. Gotta love an explosive victory. At this point, I had been working for 6.5 hours straight, minus a little cracker break I took. But I was determined to finish this weekend, even if that possibly was a stupid decision I made because I was losing my mind listening to the graphics music nonstop this entire time. Oh my god. Going insane. Speaking of music, I had to make some of that. Even at my wit's end, I had a pretty fun time laying down a melody and playing around with DIY's selection of very normal instruments that would hopefully not get you put on a list. Just one baby. Fuck. Let's see what the baby sounds like. We'll see what the baby sounds like. Fine. Is this the baby? I think it's gotta be the baby. Oh my god. Ooh, yeah, that's actually kind of good. Why is the baby kind of good? Oh. I've been getting back into music production lately, and it was crazy to me how much that changed my experience with the music maker compared to my last pursuits. It's a pretty simple but very fun DAW when you kind of know what you're doing, and even when you don't. And honestly, I would say that description applies to the entire experience of WarioWare D.I.Y. You're not going to make the next Hollow Knight or Blatro in this game, but it does give you tools that force you to experiment with simplicity by stripping back the scope of everything. You can't make a full-on platformer or an in-depth battle system. You can only draw on one layer, only have 4 tracks for your music, and each object only gets 5 slots of AI. As a digital artist who's used to having a plethora of in-depth tools at my disposal, art programs, music software, video editors, being shoved into Wario's tiny little 2-screen box is a surprising breath of fresh air. Maybe those limitation innovation bakers were right. Watching Nut Shooter get loaded up into the shipping truck after my 12 hours of work stirred up a sense of accomplishment I honestly haven't felt in a while. I'm glad I was able to play this game as a kid, and it was a surreal experience going back to it and finally understanding some of the more complicated parts of WarioWare D.I.Y that flew over my head back then. It honestly has made me a lot more interested in learning how to do game dev on my computer, which is another big thing I've always hesitated to get into. I'd say if any of this seemed interesting or fun to you at all, then maybe give microgame dev a try and do it yourself. Wario did not pay me to say that. There are also similar block-based programming game engines that you can get for your computer, but I don't know enough to be able to recommend any at the moment. If anyone in the comments does, feel free to drop one. Oh, and if you want to give Nut Shooter a try, I'll leave a link to it in the description. There's a pretty stellar fan site called Dojinsoft that has been hosting microgames for years. You can download them to your game save or even play them in your browser. And it works on mobile, so now we can all shoot nuts wherever we please. At last. As for me, I'm gonna go hit up the old W man, see if I can't get a raise after making all these games for him. Oh gosh, I hope he doesn't blow up on me. Well, off I go.